Welcome back to Bonded Sister Edition. We have quite an episode in store for you today. This topic is toxic social media. As I looked into this topic, I was actually really surprised. Well, not surprised, but I was just, when you actually see the numbers and the statistics of what social media is doing to people and how it is toxic, it's really enlightening and powerful. It's just something that it's good to be aware of as you actively use social media and engage in it.
Yeah, I think as the youngest, you've been exposed to social media the most and probably engage in it more overall than me or Gina do.
Yeah.
Like I would say we all did grow up in a time we had a childhood without social media, and you just don't have that now.
I did want to talk about some of the statistics. Recent studies show that 67% of adolescents report feeling worse about their own lives as a result of their social media use.
There's a lot to break down there because I feel like apps and social media in general were designed to keep you super engaged and almost like mindlessly scrolling, waiting for that next dopamine rush, as you say, right? Like social media was designed to be addictive, and I'll let you talk to this, but like many doctors will say like the same reaction in the brain in terms of like dopamine and like neurological response is very similar to that of drugs and alcohol.
Yes.
Which is crazy.
Yes. So social media affects the pleasure and reward center in the brain. It affects neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, opioids, so like all the pleasure and happiness neurotransmitters. And these signals in the brain, when they're continually tapped into and they're fluctuating constantly with the use of social media, it creates harmful effects like depression and anxiety. And Harvard research has found that the dopamine released when you get likes on your social media post or page is equatable to taking drugs like cocaine. Like
That's crazy.
It is that
is crazy.
addictive. Over time, this in a damaging way affects our reward processing, our habit formation, and even our impulse control. Studies show that people have more of like a lack of impulse control, lack of self-control from using social media very excessively. And I think we see that all the time in society. It's very clear.
And I think to add to that, like it alters your perception of reality at times, right? Because especially if you're seeing a lot of negative things on social media, you could almost come to the conclusion of like, oh, well, people suck and the world sucks and like all this bad news you're seeing. You know what I mean? Because also I don't think we were meant to ingest all the different things like that are coming at us
all at one time.
It's like information overload.
To go off of that, it's really sad because we are so allegedly connected in every possible way through social media, but statistics and studies show that people have never felt more alone and more isolated than they do in the times we're living in.
It's true.
And I think a big part of that, like you were saying, Gina, I think you were saying, in other words, you're just looking at other people's lives, and there's almost a sense of comparison we've mentioned.
It is the comparison culture you talk about.
And FOMO. And it's like when everyone is posting their best moments on social media without this genuine and authentic view of their lives, because no one's life is perfect, as we've said in like other episodes. And it's so easy for people to look at social media and like compare themselves to others or compare their timeline to others. I mean, Facebook literally calls it a timeline. And that makes me think it's very intentional, right?
True.
Like trying to create this like overwhelming herd mentality,
I like that.
overwhelming sense of peer pressure, right? We all experienced it in our adolescent years, and I think social media takes peer pressure to the nth degree. And when you're comparing yourself to those standards that are promoted on social media, whether standards of beauty, standards of where your life should be, it can promote this depression because it feels like impossible. It feels like you're always behind, you're always deficient in something. And to go back to the statistic about adolescence, like it's very damaging for young people that are still developing emotionally, physically.
And that statistic is very specific. It specifically says report feeling worse about their own lives. Like,
And I also think like specifically I want to call out like having a daughter. I think it's super concerning the adolescent teenage years for young girls, because first of all, we all know that's like hard enough as is. Like I remember that without social media, and wow, it's really difficult to go through those years. But then to also see what they're seeing on social media, especially like when you think about the influencer industry, or like how womanhood is being propped up in society, and you're a girl and you're just coming into your own, you're feeling these pressures in the way of how other women look or how I want to be perceived as a woman. It's a very confusing time.
Even like this woman is getting attention on social media by doing these
Yup,
things.
yup.
So I am going to imitate those
Her.
things without knowing fully, because their brains are not fully developed, like the negative consequences of gaining that attention in these harmful ways.
And you can honestly like I said, like I feel like my specific generation too, like, and even the one right below me, we just got bombarded. Like social media just became such a thing. I feel like around the time I was like 15, I will say like you can literally lose yourself in the process of trying to keep up with the world and social media. You could literally lose your identity and yourself and the path you're supposed to be on by trying to be like that girl that has 1 million followers on social media and seems like she has it all. But you don't know if she cries herself to sleep every night. You don't know. It's like the danger of social media. Even TikTok, for example, I was on it the other day. I think sometimes people like TikTok a little more because you will find a little more realness on there. 2 girls popped up in my feed. One was talking about how she's so sad. She feels like she has her whole life together, but she just doesn't have a romantic partner and she's really lonely. So that's very real. People, and it got so many because people want to know that, hey, I'm not the only one struggling. Then there was another reel of this girl that was like, I don't know if she was funny. She was like, I don't know if it's like my time of the month, but like, why does everything just seem so hard? She was just like crying. And Instagram is more like everyone's always looking perfect. We would literally, remember when we were all saying, like some people were all saying to each other, like, is this Instagram worthy? Like that, when that term started coming into play, that's when it really got toxic, I feel like. Because is this Instagram worthy? Excuse me. Like, sorry, I'm getting a little passionate and then I get a little sassy on accident. I'm sorry. How about like you're worthy? I don't care about if your picture's not flawless or perfect. Like, you are not going to walk away a more solid person because you popped off on social media. You're just not.
Don't
I just ranted a little bit.
You did. But no, like everything you're saying is so true. And I don't disagree with any of it. I think you're driving home the point that I was going to make, which is like specifically in girls from like ages 10 to 15, that like later adolescence, which like
you can't properly process it.
Yeah, they have their brain is just not fully developed. And I think it's also just as dangerous for boys in their adolescence, especially this presence that women have on social media that really showcases to young boys, this is specifically what women are for, right? Being like sexualized a lot of the time. So it's also planting in their head, like, are women more of a utility than someone I can connect with? Because like you're not connecting with a picture, right? Like you can't connect, like you'd barely see a person when you're looking at that as a young boy. You mostly just really see an object. And there have been studies done that like they watched the brain and like men swiped through pictures of objects, sporting equipment, women that weren't dressed and weren't clothed, and like nothing changed in their brain when they were processing it. So it's also dangerous for young boys too.
Yes. It alters the function of the brain for young men, young women, and also like men and women of all ages. And I think that's the point too that we're trying to drive home in talking about some of the potential dangers of social media. And like you said, Vanessa, in the intro, just being aware of these things so that then we can make informed decisions about how to use social media in a healthy way. And as you mentioned in regards to TikTok, there are some aspects of social media that can be positive and relatable and even, inspirational to others. There are people who use their platforms to do good. And I think the technological advance has positive and negative effects, but we certainly cannot ignore the dangers and destructive nature that social media can have when it is not used in moderation, when it is used in an unhealthy and not rightly ordered way, which, as you both were saying, then takes you away from being present in your own life and growing in your own life, present to the people around you, forming those true connections and living the life that you're called to live, free from an overwhelming distraction that social media often poses.
Most things, honestly, obviously can have a use for good and bad. And I think like the cards are a bit stacked against us with social media, since considering how it was designed, right? And how it
Yes.
was designed to be addictive and enticing. I was just watching a video, and I need to link it below to make sure that this person gets credit, but they were talking about like boredom. Our generations don't experience boredom. You have a moment you're feeling bored, you grab your phone and you start scrolling, because we have endless entertainment, billions of dollars worth of investment in apps and social media platforms to keep us entertained. And so we're not experiencing boredom. And what's happening is, in boredom, you would be like, most likely you wouldn't just lay there and stare at a wall and say, I'm bored. You'd be productive. You'd read a book. You'd go on a walk.
You let your creative
you would,
juices flow.
yes, you would call a friend that you haven't caught up with in a while. You would do something to be like productive. I think most people would, at least, or take a nap, whatever, which would either or.
That's productive
But
too.
Yes.
When you
yes,
need rest, by
when
the
you
way.
need rest, exactly. And so I think like in not being bored, it's stunting our self-growth as well. We're usually mindlessly scrolling. That's where that comes from. And so it's not good to not be bored, because when you're bored, you allow time to think and to reflect and to be in that present moment and almost evaluate what things that are around you, evaluate your life. It's like even going on a walk, but you're buried in your phone. I see people sometimes like going on a walk, but buried in their phone and whatever, maybe they're listening to a podcast or what have you, but to like look around, absorb this world around you that also would produce like, maybe not dopamine, but like a serotonin response or like a happiness, right? To just like enjoy and take in what's around you. So
Yes.
I just think that's problematic as well.
There's a couple things that you mentioned, taking a walk or exercise, reading a book. Those things require a little bit of effort on our part to receive that gratification.
That's
Whereas
true.
research that I was
Ooh, that's a good
reading
point.
about shows that social media is also so addictive because it's instant gratification. You can like and receive likes in one moment. You don't have to work that hard to do it. You post something
And instantly get like all these likes and all this gratification from it. So I think from that too, we are kind of creating people to
programming
kind of by
people.
accidentally be self-absorbed, accidentally fall into this trap of like me. Oh my, I just need more likes. I need more I need more compliments. I need more and that's also toxic.
In addition to what you're saying, Vanessa, about social media creating this environment, essentially breeding entitlement, narcissism, self-absorption.
I feel like narcissism could be a whole nother episode.
It will be.
It should be. It
You
should
know,
be. It should
but
be.
It breeds those things. But again, like Gina said, I think what you're talking about with boredom, and this is something I was reflecting on with social media, is in our chaotic lives, there's very little space in general that we have to just sit in and reflect on the truly important things in life. And it's almost like you can use, if you want, social media to fill every single void.
Yeah.
And I think that is a big part of what you were saying, instead of then choosing other things to do. And that was something that's been convicting for me in my life. It entertains you for a moment, but does it leave you feeling more fulfilled after that?
Because
Yeah.
the thing is, just like drugs and alcohol, it's like it's never enough. You go back for more. You want more. You want more likes, more this, more followers, more. Like it's never enough. You need that constant like hit again.
And like just like drugs or alcohol, it would take more. Like it increasingly takes more for you to have that same response. That's what's an addiction, right? It's fueled by wanting more. To your point, but another point I want to make to that is that what a victory for the enemy. Right? And I'm talking like spiritually now. What a victory for the enemy to just have you mindlessly scrolling your whole life. I mean, come on.
Yep.
Like what an easy distraction. I think like you said, Christina, when you are not satisfied with your life and it is so much easier to just push it off and just keep fueling this, like filling every moment, much of the moments with social media, than to take a second and say, okay, what about my life is making me stress out, or that I'm wanting these distractions, or I'm
Yes.
wanting to mindlessly scroll? Like I can't have
Yes.
that self-reflective moment. And how great that is for the enemy, because in self-reflection and being able to hear a moment of silence is when God's voice comes, right? And if the enemy can just keep all this noise around you for your whole life and you do not pick up your head and see or hear or find Jesus, what a victory it is. What a victory it is because you were mindlessly scrolling through watching other people's lives unfold. I mean, the irony in that, right? When we have these beautiful lives of our own to live.
Something that's coming to mind as you're talking about this on the spiritual side is that social media also gets us to really focus on earthly desires, pleasures. It gets us to fix our eyes on the things of this world, the things we may have, the things that we may not have that are leaving us in our minds unfulfilled. Whereas the Bible and scripture talks about focusing our minds on the things above. So I think one of the ways that social media can be spiritually damaging is it really fixes our eyes on the things of this world and keeps us stuck in that reality versus living for the higher reality and the higher calling that God has for our lives.
I totally love this point you're making about that because I think it's so hard for people to wrap their head around anything beyond this world, beyond the walls that we see, the earth that we see, the people that we see, and just like think about, obviously we're spiritual, we're religious. We believe that this is like the perfect segue for a spiritual warfare episode because there are angels and demons and there is a veil and there is a whole nother spiritual realm that we cannot see. And it doesn't mean that it's not real. And I think so often like we equate like real things to only like what we can see or conceptualize in our minds. And we're so limited that's just, there's so much beyond that. And I think what you're saying, Christina, is like not being so knee deep in what's going on around us in this world and not even in our own world, which can bog you down, but then in everyone else's lives, you're ingesting all that information. And so I think distraction is just the best way to summarize it. Like it's so distracting and you cannot pick your head up and even begin to imagine anything else.
Yes.
Like it's binding mentally.
Yes.
To just be so deep in your phone that this is reality. When I'm in church, I am like, God, I feel you. I am with you. I have goosebumps. I'm singing your praise. I feel your presence. And then we walk back out into the world and it's like, dim down a bit, like how you were feeling. It's like, and you're like, okay, back to reality. It's like, no, this is reality. This is the closest we're gonna be to like what's real, you know? It's wild.
I think the point is, again, that awareness of how we're using social media, at what point it's moderated in our lives so that we minimize any damaging effects on our minds, on our spirits, and in our lives.
And I just want to say, like, I do not have this down yet. Like I could spend a lot less time on social media. I'm not one that should be saying like,
should we check your screen time?
No, I don't
right now.
Like,
pass
honestly,
me your phone.
No, I'm okay. So, but I just want to make that clear. Like I'm not like, on my high horse of like, I never go on, or I could,
same.
I don't spend that much time on it. You know, so, but we're all a work in progress. And it just is, like I said in the beginning, like it just is good to be aware of these statistics and aware of what potentially this could be doing you. Because like another thing of the enemy is like, it's harmless. This is all harmless. Just spending time on your phone. You're just laughing. You're just watching a reel.
You deserve to relax.
Yeah, you're just chilling. It's not going to really do anything. Keep going. You're fine. 5 hours went by. No worries.
Yeah. Being very like self-aware of your screen time and trying to limit that.
And to share and be vulnerable as well. That's something that I've been convicted by recently. And I've never been someone, I mean, my sisters can vouch for this. I've never been someone who's addicted to social media. That's just not my style. And I have found myself recently, I think it was last weekend actually, that I woke up in the morning, I grabbed my phone, and I was on Instagram for like maybe 30, 45 minutes scrolling and looking at reels. And again, like my life is so structured in the day to day that that can be such a temptation to like, I'm laying in my bed, like I'm just gonna sit here and keep scrolling. But I realized I just started my day off on the wrong foot. Like my spirit felt it. Like I didn't feel right. I didn't feel at peace. And I've heard about studies that have shown looking at social media first thing in the morning increases your risk of depression and anxiety. And the research that I found on it by neuroscientists demonstrates it interrupts your brain waves when you're waking up from like a fully asleep to then gradually becoming fully awake. It interrupts that cycle, and it essentially spikes your stress waves, like the beta waves right away in your brain by looking at social media first thing. And I just decided like I am not going to look at social media before I pray. Like I have certain prayers that I do every single morning. And if I haven't gotten out of bed, I don't say the prayers because I kneel down to do the prayers. So
I can't even talk to her much. I didn't do my prayers yet. Go.
So I recognized that I didn't do my prayers, and I just grabbed social media and started scrolling, and I felt it. Like I felt off. So lately, my new resolution is I will always pray before I even touch social media. Another thing social media takes away from us is like this, as a women of faith, like we acknowledge it's important to live for the audience of one, not try to like impress everyone else with your life, but like I want to live my life for God. Like his opinion is the only opinion of me that truly matters. And social media again distracts us from that as well. We want to be received well by what others, which is not inherently a bad thing. But again, when you're trying to like live your life in such a way that everything looks good on social media and like people perceive you a certain way on social media, it distracts us from, I think, living our lives more fully and completely for God. Just knowing the ways that you can moderate your social media use and my self-reflection, that's what I was trying to do. Okay, this does not make me feel good for the rest of the day if this is how my day starts. And I think just reflecting on that, your current use of social media, how much time you're spending on it, what might be a reasonable amount for you.
Try to limit that time that you're spending on social media that may be causing those negative emotions in you. And then also just on the other hand, like be very grateful for your life and what you have and those intangibles that are truly a treasure that you were blessed with.
Make sure you're always counting those blessings. Yeah. And with that,
we want to close with scripture as per the usual. And the verse that we chose for today is from Romans chapter 12, verse 2. And it reads, "And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may prove what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect." And so I think we touched on the ways that social media can attack our minds and trap us in our minds and cause these different issues. And we hope that this will inspire both ourselves and others to reflect on the ways that we can be renewed in our mind and take a step back from the ways that social media may be harming us and, move forward walking with God and living our highest call.
Yes. I love that.
Amen, sister friend.
Thanks for listening.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bonded.
Bonded. #.
Oh, God.